I finally said to Andrew, I said, look, at 3 strikes, I'm out. There's no way I'm going to be able to break this record. And he said, it's really funny that you pride yourself on being optimistic and you're looking at the things that are keeping you from this record. When I saw you have multiple 20-plus-mile long runs, I saw you have your longest tempo runs of your entire career, and you're still able to hit sub 5 minutes on mile repeats. So despite your excuses, I'd say you're pretty ready to break that record. And I thought, I'll be damned, like both of these stories are totally factual. And I just thought, only one of these stories is going to get me to that goal. And so I dropped the excuses in that conversation and I seeped myself in the belief that the training that I did do would carry me to that record. And
Deena, what I find most compelling about your story is not just what you've achieved, but how you achieved it, and specifically the role that a deliberate shift in your mental approach played in getting you there. So you're one of the most decorated American distance runners of all time, 3 times Olympian with a bronze medal at Athens Olympics in 2004. Sorry, I'm so used to saying 20 something these days.
way back.
Yeah. You also held the Americans marathons record, and you have the Chicago and London marathon titles to your name, right? And then to top it all off, at 42 years old, you ran 2:27 to set the US Women's Masters marathon record. You've spoken extensively about how changing your mental approach transformed your running. Well, you even wrote a book about it, Let Your Mind Run, and it became a New York Times bestseller. We'll definitely talk more about your book a bit later, but first, could you walk me through what changing your mental approach actually looked like? Basically what it was before, what triggered the pivot, and what actually changed.
Yeah, wow. I've been running a long time, so that pivot was a long time ago. And mostly it was when I graduated from college. I had already been running for about 15 years. So in talking to my future coach, Coach Vigil, on the phone, the way he was talking about training methodology and adrenal cortical reserves and VO2 max, I was like, what language is this man speaking? And I realized I knew absolutely nothing about the sport I had been doing more than half my life. And it really excited me to be a student of what I'm actually doing. And so under his tutelage, he was, Joe Vigil was my first professional coach. I trusted his training so much, and he left it to me to work on, as he would call it, the 6 inches above my shoulders. Like, I had to get in the hard work, but I had to focus on my attitude and living an athlete's lifestyle 24/7. And he put the onus on me to do the mental approach and the style of living that would be able to reap the goals that I was chasing. And so it first came down to trusting in the physical training program. But what I soon found out is that if I was having like a rough day or a tough interval, that feeling self-defeated or really dwelling on the fatigue was just so heavy. And as soon as he would say, you got to have a good attitude, I would find a different way to think about it. Like, the hills are making me stronger every time I run them, or the guys are bringing the best out of me, even though I'm so far off of their shoulders. And just that small shift, I could feel it resonate physically different in my body, and it would push me forward with a greater ease. And I found that so fascinating, and it just put me on this spiral, and I'm still on it today, trying to find the end of optimism. But just like really exploring how we have on average about 75,000 thoughts that go through our head every single day. And if we could just pay attention to some of them, we don't have to constantly be in this meditative state or a state of mindfulness. If we just harnessed a few of those thoughts for the important moments of our day, to be able to ride a higher frequency and wavelength and get better hormones. I feel like our thoughts really produced the chemistry of our body. And so we could just harness a little bit of that and flood our body with, instead of cortisol, stress hormone that leaves us like fatigued and tight and injury
Stressed
prone
and
and
yeah.
not able to troubleshoot or make decisions very well. If we could stop that thought process and instead bring a thought into our bodies and minds that fill us with hope and excitement and the thrill of exertion, then we're stopping the cortisol and we're flooding our bodies with oxytocin and serotonin and
Yeah.
dopamine and neurotransmitters and so I feel like we're kind of like our own chemist that we get to like manipulate this whole system, and it became such a fun game for me. And I'd have to say that although I did it to chase records and wins and medals, that
You gamified it.
yeah, the biggest thing is that it shows up in daily life as well. And you know, if we're learning these great lessons about ourselves in the time we're in our running shoes, we're really cheating ourselves out of the great lessons that sport can offer us, and that those same attributes of grittiness and perseverance and determination and fortitude and resiliency, that if we could bring them into our everyday life, we're the same person, so they should know no boundaries when it comes to flexing those strengths in our character.
You know, most runners understand the physical side of training, right? You know, the structure of intervals, long runs, easy runs built into a weekly training cycle. But the mental side is a bit less structured. You know, it's a bit up there, right? So when someone wants to intentionally start treating mindset as something trainable or as something to work on, how would they begin to structure it into their training and daily life?
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like I'm reverting back to the origins of why people got involved in distance running, for cardiovascular health and bone density and muscle strength. As I'm 53 years old, I like want to keep those things flexed as well. But for decades, I was focused on the mental side, and for, I would say, the two practices that I have done over the past few decades that have been the easiest to practice and the most reward has been keeping a gratitude list.
Oh
So
yeah, I love that.
that's
Yeah.
structured in and of itself, but what a gratitude practice shows you, and there's rules, of course, there's rules to everything when there's a structured practice, but it's writing down every day three things you're grateful for, and every day they have to be unique items, and you're writing them down, because if we have those 75,000 fleeting thoughts that go through our minds, like we can't possibly remember all of them. So if you're writing down, it's time to reflect and really let the gratitude seep in and do its magic in how it reacts chemically in your body. Daily is to make it a routine of seeing the good in your life. Three isn't an arbitrary number. In the science of positive psychology, it takes three positive thoughts to counter a single negative thought. So
Oh,
uh,
okay.
that's how obnoxious negativity is in our lives. And
Yeah.
it's our default setting, unfortunately. But if we can think of those three things, then we're canceling out some negativity. And the real important rule is the one of uniqueness, so that you're just constantly every day searching for the good in your day. And that's really where the magic of gratitude works, is that if our minds are not capable of multitasking, which I actually read in a brain science journal years ago, and I didn't believe it. I thought I was like an exception to the rule because I considered myself very good at multitasking. But if our brains can't multitask and we're constantly searching for the good in our day, then we can't also be letting those little nuances get under our skin that don't
Yeah.
really matter or shouldn't be affecting us. So a gratitude practice is a really powerful practice, and it, although it's just sitting there in the evening or in the morning with your cup of tea and writing down three things, it really does encompass your whole day, because you're always looking
Yeah.
for it. You're always looking for the good. So that was a really powerful practice for me. And it helped me to see the good in fatigue and in doubt. Like when I started to doubt myself, it would be an alarming thought, because I was in the good most of the day. And so where's this doubt coming from? Oh, it's because I'm scared that I'm not going to hit this goal or be able to do this next interval. And okay, well, let's try anyway. So it ends up creating a healthy conversation. And then the other practice is just, I feel like so much of the time we wait to get a promotion or to run a personal best or to win our age group at the local race in order to feel a sense of joy. And
Yeah.
so very early in my career, I started just adding joy to some of the unenjoyable moments of my career, or my weekly schedule. The low hanging fruit for me was Sunday long runs. I was always struggling on the Sunday long run and would just be exhausted afterwards. And I remember just waking up already feeling defeated one morning. And so I changed the script a little and put on my favorite running outfit, and I would only wear it on Sundays. And I would make coffee in my favorite French press and only on Sunday mornings. And I would make scone dough the night before so I could have fresh pastries in the morning. And I would read the comic section of the newspaper before heading out the door. And I was like already in a better mood just as even before the run started. And it really did bring out a stronger side in my performance in the run. And so just seeing all those magnificent gains just from creating those little shifts in practice. And then I just started adding joy because it felt good. So like flowers next to the washer and dryer so that I can enjoy folding laundry in the afternoons, and listening to music while I was cooking dinner to create like a theme. Like if I'm making avocado enchiladas, I'll be listening to mariachi music. And if I'm the dough on Friday nights for pizza nights, then we're listening to Italian opera. Just some fun things to like create fun and fanfare out of mundane and everyday activities. And I feel like that really, those two practices in and of themselves just made me innately happier and a lot faster.
Positive thinking sounds good, right? But some might question how or whether it actually translates into moving the needle in performance. You just said that it made you faster. How did the mental approach that you developed translate directly into performance results?
Yeah, I think I was just getting feedback from my stopwatch, right? From the actual times I was posting in practice, like miraculously enjoying the process more and being faster were simultaneous. Like they weren't two separate things. It was like just grinding away and really struggling and kind of in a rut to immediately shifting my focus and feeling that it just unlocked doors for me. Like it just seemed like, I can only, I only know now that it was more of like a histochemical effect of just like
Okay.
breaking down barriers and tension. Because at the same time that I was practicing all of this, the science of positivity was really just at its starts with Barbara Fredrickson and Martin Seligman.
Oh,
They were
yeah.
just starting the science of positive psychology. And so now we've got at our fingertips more than 25 years of research that shows how our bodies change physiologically when we are thinking optimistically and hopefully rather than pessimistically, even sarcastically. Like
Yeah.
sarcasm can be fun in the room sometimes. And when I say the room, I mean up in our heads. It can be fun to be sarcastic sometimes, but our bodies really thrive in an optimistic environment.
How did your mental approach change as you transition from competing as an elite athlete to competing as a masters athlete? Do you still apply the same framework or did it evolve through those stages?
Yeah, I really did as an aging athlete. I do still approach running with very similarly, and it's really just embracing the time in my running shoes and putting forward a challenge. Like today, it was running up the hill for 15 minutes. I was climbing and climbing and climbing. And I was like, I should stop. I should stop and just enjoy the view. And I was like, no, I'm going to grind this out. It just felt so good to be exhausted. And I really love that. I love that feeling of pushing my my physical body, but also convincing myself that going further is a good idea. And there's some days where I do stop and look at the view because that's a better idea. But I really do just love the challenge. But my relationship with running is definitely different. Like same strategies, but a different relationship because the goals have changed. My goal is no longer to break records and win races. My goal is to continue challenging my physical body so I can stay physically fit, but also at the same time challenging my mental approach. And that is mostly because I want it to always be handy in life, right? Like it really doesn't matter that I'm running the extra mile up the hill today, but it does matter for that sense of perseverance and endurance to be able to grind out an extra mile when I need it. And that will remind me in a time in the next month or two when I'm questioning a point that I'm at in an everyday situation that I have what it takes to continue at this for another mile.
I definitely want to go into your training right now, what you do right now. But before we do that, let's talk a bit about your master's record, which you broke, was it 11 years ago when you were 42? You ran 2:27 to break the women's master's record. That's extraordinary. Well, and so were the achievements of Des Linden and Sarah Hall that followed on to break those records. But for you specifically, what was happening physically and mentally that allowed you to, well, first keep running at such a high level into your 40s? And that would be almost 3 decades of running for you by the time.
Yeah.
And secondly, to set the master's record.
Yeah, so it was Colleen DeRook's master's record, and we were Olympic teammates
Okay.
in prior years, and so it was just a privilege to attempt that record. And I think my purpose behind it was very unselfish. My husband, Andrew Kastor, had just taken over the Mammoth Track Club, and I really wanted
Okay.
to show his younger athletes that his training works, right? So
Okay.
following all the training and being able to set an example for his athletes. And so I kind of had that onus on my shoulder, and I don't think it was at the forefront of my mind, but it was definitely in there as wanting to be supportive of him in his new role. But also we had a new daughter, and I was exploring what being a mom and chasing records was still about, trying to find that balance, which is never easy. And really non-existent in life, balance at any level. So in the build up, I had this goal of breaking her record, but we had California wildfires that really were like raining ash in this area for almost 2 months. And so some days when the particle index was too dense, I would stay inside and run on the treadmill with air filters going on around me. If it was really bad and I even smelled smoke in the house, I just didn't run at all. Just valuing my lungs and what they've done for me over the years. I also, since having my daughter, acquired a sagebrush allergy, and we are surrounded by pine trees and sage here. And so fall was a really hard time with my allergies. Some days I was like so itchy and coughing that I'd forego workouts. So I felt like my training was super compromised. And then 2 weeks before the race, my daughter came home from kindergarten with the flu, or preschool with the flu, and I got it soon after. And so just wiped out, down and out. And I finally said to Andrew, I said, look, at 3 strikes, I'm out. There's no way I'm going to be able to break this record. I've the wildfires, the allergies, the flu, this is not meant to be. This isn't lining up in my favor. And he said, it's really funny that you pride yourself on being optimistic and you're looking at the things that are keeping you from this record when I saw you have multiple 20+ mile long runs. I saw you have your longest tempo runs of your entire career, and you're still able to hit sub 5 minutes on mile repeats. So despite your excuses, I'd say you're pretty ready to break that record. And I thought, I'll be damned. Like, both of these stories are totally factual. wildfires, allergies, and the flu, and long runs, nailing long runs and tempo runs and mile repeats, although not as many as I would have liked. And I just thought, only one of these stories is gonna get me to that goal. And so I dropped the excuses in that
Hmm.
conversation and I seeped myself in the belief that the training that I did do would carry me to that record. And even the race itself, when I lined up in Chicago for the marathon, the race itself was heavily flawed, more so than the buildup itself. I got tripped, I missed a water bottle station, and I really value those calories and work hard
Yeah.
at like consuming as many as I possibly can at every aid station. And so I every time I was challenged in that race, I just refocused. I was like, well, this has already been hard. I'm not going to let this be the one thing that brings me down. Let's just refocus.
Mm.
And I just kept refocusing and refocusing. And I finally made it to that finish line. And it was probably the most rewarding finish line I have ever made it to because it took so much to get there. But it was also the greatest lesson in optimism that I've
Yeah.
ever experienced, that it was everything I believed in working in my favor, making those decisions to keep going despite what was telling me to stop, the doubt, the discomfort, all of that was telling me to stop. And I just kept pushing forward and was able to break that record by almost a minute. So it was definitely an unassuming best race of my entire career, even though I was seventh place overall.
Does setting the Masters record teach you anything about aging as a runner that you probably wouldn't have known if you had not achieved it?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I'm thinking along the lines of imperfections just being part of the experience. I don't believe I've ever run a perfect race, not a single one. And so to have a race so heavily flawed in the buildup and in the race experience itself is that all those flaws didn't weren't able to counterbalance the weight of experience and the practice of optimism from the past.
Suffering is inevitable during a marathon, right? And I see that reaction. And I've heard you speak about breaking the final miles of Chicago 2015 into manageable chunks. And I'm sure you were deep in the pain cave at that point. Could you walk me through exactly what would that look like in practice, the breaking down of those miles into chunks?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a privilege in this sport, a privilege that we put ourselves in a place of fatigue and discomfort, and where maybe earlier in my career when I got uncomfortable, I would be like, "Oh no, here it is! Like this is the end. This is the decline." I got like a little more almost like masochistic in my later stages of my career, where when it started to hurt, I would get super excited, like, "Oh, this is when I get to put in the really good work." And so I actually really learned to appreciate that discomfort because that's where,
Hmm.
I mean, that is the critical moment of decision making that makes that finish line so emotional and so rewarding because you were able to prove to yourself and only yourself that you had the capability when everything in you is screaming to stop. Your legs are telling you they can't go another step. And so it's our job when we start to get those signals, those panic signals, to figure out how to get in the next mile, to just like run the mile that you're in that moment. And if that seems too unbearable, you just keep breaking it down until you could say, okay, I could do that. I've even gone to the point where I'm like, okay, just get to the halfway point, and then you could drop out because it's the shortest route back to your hotel. And then you get there, and you're like, oh, I could go another couple miles, and then you convince yourself to go another couple miles. So to me, I think if we don't take ourselves too seriously and just think of it as like a fun game to try to
Yeah.
master each time, but really taking the life lessons and making it about your character. That's always been very important for me. That if I've spent 30 years in this sport trying to build a character that's gritty and tough and optimistic and and resilient. I'll be damned if this one moment right here, this little form of fatigue that I am feeling in the whole world is going on right now, and I'm focused on this little strain in my hamstring. Like, get over it. So I'm thinking about my character. Like, you're not going to let your hamstring define you in this moment. Like, you're going to define yourself to the gritty, tough person that you've always been and will continue to be. So I just make a fun game out of it. But I think most important in the beginning of a race, I try to maintain my first professional coach, Joe Vigil, would call it emotional control, to just be like deep breathing and being very calm at the start line, being in control of your emotions, not wasting too much energy. And then once you get to the 20-ish mile mark, then you start caring a lot. And it is a really big deal that you're there. So I feel like it's like playing with the story that's gonna deliver what you need in that moment. It's no big deal at the start line. It's just a race. You do this, you run every single day. It's just another run. And then
Yeah.
at the 20-mile mark, when I say this isn't a big deal, I should just pull over, I'm like, no, it is now a very big deal. You've got to define yourself in this moment as being tough and determined.
Yeah, the last 6 miles, right? The first
Yeah.
20 miles is like transportation.
I mean, you hope it's 20. Sometimes it's the last 22 miles. I've had it
Yeah.
hurt the last 20, or the last 10K, but also the last 12K, 15K. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you're now 53. You just turned 53 a couple of months ago, right?
Yeah.
I know you're coaching through a few different platforms, and we can talk about that a bit later. But are you still racing? I know you're still training. You just mentioned that, but are you still racing right now?
So I am not racing to the point where I'm training at a high level to accomplish marathons at my best of the moment. I train so that I can stay fit enough so I can just go jump in races when I want to. My last marathon was last fall in
Okay.
Sydney, Australia. And
Oh, okay.
that was really fun. So I can get my seventh star for the Abbott World
Marathons. Yeah,
Championships.
yeah.
Just had a brilliant time there. The race itself, it was like a picture perfect day to be
Okay.
racing. So I had a really good time. But then also my husband and 15-year-old daughter were with me. So we were whale watching and went snorkeling at the Great Barrier Reef with a research team, and just really had a wonderful, wonderful time together. And that's really what sports allow us to do, is to
Yeah.
travel to these races and have that sense of community at the race itself, but then be able to venture out and see parts of the world with our families. Pretty special.
So how has your training actually changed over the years? You know, from what you will focus on before as an elite runner to what is your focus on now, and how would you prioritize your different workouts these days?
Yeah, I'm totally unstructured now.
Okay.
Totally unstructured in my training. Like, I used to meet my team at 8 o'clock every single morning, 7 days a week, no days off. Now it's getting up and getting my daughter out the door to school, and then I come home, and then I get my run
Is
in,
she
and
15 now? Is she?
15, freshman in high
Okay.
school. So I
Okay.
think for a short window of my life, she is a priority in the scheduling of my day. And then I get my training in once she's off at school. But training would be whatever I want it to be that day, whatever I have time for. If I have an interview or a podcast or too many emails in my inbox, it might be a shorter style run. And if I have the first half of the day to myself, then I'll just go without my watch on and explore a new trailhead, or try to make a new loop from the house. And so I still have fun with it and challenge myself in different ways, but also adding strength training right now just for bone health and muscle mass has been a new addition.
Is strength training a bit more important for you now as you're aging, or was it a very big part during your elite days
It
as
was
well?
a very big part of my professional running career.
Okay.
I dedicated a lot of time with specificity training in the weight room, and then I got away from it as soon as my daughter was born. So 15 years ago, I stopped, but just started up again so that I can start. I can tell that I'm losing muscle mass, so I want to get that back.
But yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Recovery is the thing all the runners seem to struggle with, right? The most. How has your recovery changed over the years? And were there any adjustments that you made that help you recover faster as you aged?
I will say that I haven't napped in 15 years. If we're going to discuss my
Okay.
daughter, I haven't napped in 15 years, but
You gave up the luxury.
napping was a big part of my career for more than 2 decades. 2 to 4 hours every afternoon to be able to stop cortisol and naturally produce human growth hormone, so I could repair from the workout in the morning to be ready to shake out and do another run in the evening. So sleep was always a big emphasis. Also sleeping 10 hours a night. So that was
Wow.
more than half of my day, either half or more than half of my day sleeping. And the rest of the time I was eating or working out. So that was pretty much the entire day. And I would say I really did emphasize nutrition, and still do to this day. Nutrition is such an important way to feed your body the nutrients it needs. And that is changing as I get older as well, needing to focus on getting different protein sources. Has been my focus most recently. I do eat, for health reasons, mostly vegetarian. So being able to be creative with protein sources has been a fun way to create new dishes in the kitchen.
You live and train in Mammoth Lakes, right? And it's at altitude with trails and mountains and all that. How much of your longevity as a runner do you attribute to the environment that you live in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think it has, but in different ways. I think that physically it was really good to get different stimulus, the pounding and monotony of the roads, of being on the asphalt for long periods of time, the track specific work of going in circles and trying to be like a metronome, right? And be able to figure out, like, really feel what paces you're running to be able to gauge that in races. And then trail running, not just for the soft terrain, but also the rolling and rocky terrain. I feel like it's good for stability muscles in your feet and your ankles and your hips. So I think that all of that contributed to staying healthy for so long. But I also believe that it helped me stay engaged for so long. Like I love to get on the roads and feel like the pounding of the roads, even wearing a thinner shoe, something not so foamy that we have today. I love getting on the road and feeling the road, as long as I'm not on it too long. And I love being on the track for the consistency. And trail running is where I really bliss out, and it really fills my emotional cup. So just that sense of exploration. I've lived here in Mammoth Lakes, California for over 25 years. And just a few days ago, I was on a trail I had never been on before. And that kind of thing makes me so giddy. Like, I just can't believe, like, you get stuck in ruts sometimes of doing certain loops because it's your favorite. But I was so excited to find a new trail. And now I want to see if I could make it like a figure eight and do it a little bit longer. So that'll be my run in the next couple of days.
Have you ventured into the ultra racing world or the ultra marathon world yet?
So I love ultra running, but I will not ultra race. I feel like that competitive racing part of me doesn't really match the vibe that I really like about going long distances. Like, there's an 18-mile loop here called the Thousand Island Lakes, and it goes on this high trail and gets on the John Muir and Pacific Crest trails, and it loops around to, gosh, I can hit 4 or 5 different lakes and the San Joaquin River crossing. And it's just so spectacular. But I like to shove a couple peanut butter and jelly sandwiches into my waist pack and sit by the lake and eat them, and stop and take pictures with my phone. So I really do love, like, just going out onto the trails for hours at a time, but I don't want to do it as fast as I can. I really like to experience it.
Got it, got it, got it. Well, the audience that listen, they're probably going to listen to this, are split into two groups. And I want to ask you about both of them. The first, to a certain extent, would be someone like you, right? A long-time runner who's been at it for decades and is now watching their times drop as age catches up with them. How would you help them find motivation and meaning in training when the numbers are kind of moving in the wrong direction? What would be your advice to them?
Yeah, I mean that's me, so I can definitely get in this category. But like at some point, our relationship with the sport has to change, and maybe for someone listening, they got involved in running because they knew it was good for their heart health. Maybe the doctor told them they should start exercising, and they chose running because it was the easiest thing to do right out their front door, and they got involved for health reasons. And then they started to feel good, and they started to have that post run glow, and then they started to see that their times were getting faster as they ran around the block, and then that buzz got them on this treadmill of chasing personal best. So that's a relationship change that then they try to do better. And then when you start to see, I mean, you stay hungry for a while thinking it's possible, right? That you could still be faster, but eventually you have to come to terms with your fastest days are behind you, and then you have to rethink why you're still doing this sport in this way. And my answer to that question when I asked it of myself years ago was that I still find great joy in getting out there and doing this.
Yeah.
I find great satisfaction in working hard. Just because I didn't run faster than 5 years ago doesn't mean I'm less. In fact, I feel like I'm still getting as much, if not more, out of the sport today as I was 15 years ago. So it's just changing your expectation and what you get out of it. Keep it meaningful and purposeful, but it's okay for your relationship with running to change.
Yeah. Well, the second is someone that is a bit more like me, coming to running only in their 40s or later, still seeing improvements year after year and feeling like there are a few more years of progression before it flips around. So what would be your advice to them so that they can protect that progress and extend it as long as possible without making mistakes that would flip the trajectory and
Yeah.
accelerate the decline?
Yeah, I think a lot of the reason that we continue to excel is because we're still adapting and growing, adapting and growing. And so it's important to keep altering your training stimulus so that you can keep getting faster. It might not come with more miles. It might come with lowering your miles during a training block and focusing on turnover. It might be the addition of strength training or core work. It could be not changing anything at all and prioritizing your sleep. It could
Yeah,
be
yeah.
hydrating better. It doesn't necessarily have to, the changes don't have to come within the running routine itself, but doing little things to be able to enhance your health and longevity in the sport is really a fun avenue to explore because there's so much to turn over. And I think if you're just changing one thing at a time, you'll really feel that adaptation happening, and it will continue to keep you excited about your progress in the sport.
Going back to someone that's feeling the decline a bit. So you ran your best marathon in 2 hours, 19 minutes, right? As an elite runner. And
Yeah.
as a masters runner, your best was 2:27. Although it was a masters record, I'm guessing it would still feel like a decline from your heyday. Coming from an elite background and seeing your times go down, was that something very difficult for you to navigate? And how do you personally deal with that?
It was, I don't think the times coming down was as challenging as becoming a new mom. Um,
Okay.
because when I ran the Masters record, I felt like I was the strongest version of myself. And I think it was the most proud I have ever been of a performance, getting that Masters record, because there was so much against me in the buildup and in
Yeah.
the race itself. So I really do feel like even though it was a far cry from 219, that I had a lot of pride in that record. The hardest part was really sharing my attention with my daughter. And I was training for the New York City Marathon when I found out that we were pregnant. I was like almost a minute and a half off of my times for mile repeats in the park. And my coach looked at me and was like, "You need a blood test." He like thought I was anemic or something, and I wasn't anemic, but pregnant. And so I just immediately shifted my focus, like it's not the race anymore. Now it's producing a healthy child, and I'll just run through my pregnancy, not necessarily train, but run to stay active and healthy and sane. And I couldn't. I was so uncomfortable. I didn't run. I couldn't even walk the dog. I just kind of like hung around the house. And it was 2 weeks after she was born that I was walking on the treadmill with her because she liked movement of all things. She didn't like movement when she was inside of me, but she liked it in the real world. So I was walking
Okay.
her on the treadmill with an exaggerated bounce and she fell asleep. So I passed her to Andrew and I put up the numbers on the treadmill and I started running, and I wasn't running fast, but I just felt like tingling through my whole body, like my system was starting to like flow again. My chi, my energy just started flowing through me, and it felt so exhilarating. Even that tiny run, it was not even a mile, and it was such a small amount of time and such a slow pace, and it felt so good that it made me know that I still had it in me. But I had a really hard time. I was trying to make my fourth Olympic team and had a really hard time balancing having been a professional runner, 100% focused on my career for so many years, my husband being all in, 100% focused. He would stretch me out before every workout, massage me after every run. And so I feel like we were just in this routine that everything was career driven. And I would imagine there's a lot of people out there like this when they start a new family, that it's a hard balance to get. And I just remember like being at practice, but then rushing home to feed her, and while everyone hung out and did their drills and their strides and their extra stretching. And then in the evening, instead of going out for a second run, I'd run on the treadmill and she'd be crying next to me in the bassinet. And I went for that fourth Olympic team at Olympic trials in Houston, and I got sixth place, and top three go to the Olympics. And I remember crossing that finish line and really feeling in my gut, my very first thought was that I failed as an athlete and a mom. And it was so sad to me that that was my initial thought, that that's what the moment meant to me. And so I had to come to terms with that. Like, why did that feel like a failure? Why did this moment feel like a failure? And because I had only known 100%. I only know how to do something 100%, and I wasn't 100% momming, and I wasn't 100% running. And so if I still want to do this as a profession, if I still want to continue running, how do I figure this out? And everybody talks to me about balance, and that's what life is all about, and time management. And I was like, yeah. But I finally just decided, when I'm home, I'm going to be 100% a mom and a wife. And when I'm in my running shoes and at practice, I am going to be 100% runner. And when I am at a corporate speaking engagement, I am going to be 100% a motivational speaker. And so really focusing on the mindfulness of the moment and trying to meet the moment that I was in wherever I was. And that really helped me be able to balance the sport and the other hats that I was going to acquire, first at being a mom, but more hats that I was going to acquire in the future.
Comparison is a thief of joy, right? And we all fall into that trap at some point, whether it's comparing yourself to your younger self or to other runners your age or to people you used to run circles around. What would be your advice to an athlete who is struggling with the problem of comparison?
Yeah, that it's such a big deal, comparison. And I think it was Teddy Roosevelt that said that comparison is the thief of joy. Uh, but I think that we live in a world where at our fingertips is social media. We can compare what other people are doing, what other people are running in training and in the racing. We could see how beautiful their cooking is, and and really compare in a million ways. I think I learned very early on in my career that comparison can be a good thing if you're looking to adopt new traits and routines. And so if I find myself in a space of comparing myself to somebody else, another mother who just seems to be able to do it all the time, right? She's everywhere, baking the cookies and driving the kids everywhere, and still has a full time job, and so if I'm going to look at that, instead of making myself feel poorly, I acknowledge that I admire that in the person. Like it's okay to admire people's work of art that they have on their plate or the times that they're running. But then thinking like, what is it in them that I might be able to emulate? Is there something that I
Mm.
might be able to adopt and incorporate into the fabric of who I am? And sometimes it's not. And then I just say, oh, then that's just awesome that they can do that. Other times I might ask them like, how do you prioritize so well? Or what takes the most space in your day, to know how they operate in that regard so that I might be able to adopt it myself. So I think comparison can be good if you're looking to adopt new practices, because we are all just kind of a quilt of our
Yeah.
upbringing, right? Of behaviors we're emulating and people who have raised us and our peers. We're just kind of a giant concoction of what we've seen in our past, maybe mixed with some genetics. But I would say comparison can be good, and can be healthy. I should say can be healthy if you're looking to adopt new traits.
For someone that can only afford 5 to 6 hours a week of running, how would you guide this person to get the most of the training time, and what would the mental approach actually look like?
I would say that not all of it has to be filled with running. That I also think like if you're a person that has an 8 to 5 desk job, or you travel a lot, so you're sitting on 14-hour airplane rides, that maybe some of your time should be stretching, kind of opening up your posture, stretching out your hip flexors and your quads, engaging your glutes, doing some glute exercises to help with your running posture, and then go out and run. So making sure you have a few exercises that are activating and stretching, behaviors that are counter to what your profession is or what you spend your most time doing, and then putting in some of the other time into running. So I think it's important to look at the entire lifestyle in order to answer a
Yeah.
question like that.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. You suffered an illness from drinking from a stream during a run, quite a serious one, right? And I think it took you out for quite a few months, and it even ruined your Olympics, right?
Yeah.
So, like when injury and illness takes running away temporarily or permanently from someone, it can feel like a loss of self. And after going through it yourself during the time when you're competing as an elite athlete, how would you help someone maintain a relationship with who they are as a runner when running is no longer available to them?
Yeah, it is. We're so wrapped up in our identity as being runners. So and it gives us so much satisfaction and
Yeah.
reward, so much positive feedback, that when we're left without it, it becomes they become some of the harder times in our lives. And so I think it's really important to reflect on why the pastime is taken away. Like I believe we're very capable of stressing our bodies to a great level and having our bodies be able to withstand it. But if it's just an injury, that has you sidelined for a little bit, to really, I mean, we run for mostly for the health of it, right? Because we know
Yeah.
it's good for our bodies and our minds. And so if that is innately our priority because we want to be doing this forever, then figure out how to get healthy so we can continue it. And instead of, I think sometimes we let the desire to run fill our headspace instead of the desire to be healthy. So really focusing on the desire to be healthy is a really important, like very small, but very
Mental shift.
important differentiation in thinking. But if running is taken away forever, or seemingly forever, I think it's really important to find a healthy way and a healthy outlet. For me, it's always been about getting fresh air and exploring. So even when I was pregnant with my daughter and I couldn't run, I would sometimes just take a book and sit outside and take deep breaths and like think of that, think of running and being on a trail and taking those deep nurturing breaths to fuel my body. I would just sit out on the deck and read and do that, as a way to give myself that, that the freshness that I really look for in the running itself. So there's positive ways. Even visualization can be a super powerful tool if you can't run, to visualize yourself running, even for 10 minutes a day, can start with that hormone release to make you feel a little better.
Let's talk very quickly a bit about your book. You wrote it more than 10 years ago. It was
Yeah. Oh my God.
thereabouts, right?
About 10 years, 2007, 17.
Yeah, just about 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. What motivated you to embark on the project? And I think I heard you talk about it being one of the toughest challenges to accomplish,
It
to
was,
complete the book.
I think it was even tougher than childbirth, to be honest.
Really?
I do. It was hard. It was really hard, a hard process to go through. It took everything, like just time, emotion, so much reflection, so
How
much
long
going.
was the whole process?
3 years,
Oh, it took you 3 years. Okay.
3 year process. And I really have to tip my hat to Michelle Hamilton, my co-author. She left her job at Runner's World to take on this project. And I think that without knowing that she sacrificed so much to help me write my story, that I would never have stuck with it. It was so draining to just reread journals, and I would write a chapter and she would go through it. And she was really dead set on starting the book in Athens. And I said, no, it can't start in Athens because that's not even my best race. And she's like, but it's how people know you. So we had so many conversations and writing retreats and, editing sessions with our editor in New York City. So it was just a lot. And just when I thought I nailed it and got it right, it would come back with so many red marks on it. And it felt like starting over. And then I had my final meltdown 5 minutes before our deadline, when I had to write the prologue of the book, like the beginning of the book, in the last 5 minutes. And
Okay.
well, it was 5 minutes before that I finally sent it to Michelle, and she had some tweaks to it, and I just started bawling, and she's like, are you sad that it's over? And I was like, no, I can't believe after 3 years of writing every single day and countless conversations with you that I am right back at the beginning of this book, writing this piece.
The
So
prologue.
it was so painful, but I think the reason it was so important was really, and the most important part of the book was getting Coach Vigil right. I wanted people to adore him as much
Hmm.
as he deserved to be adored by all the people that were, had the privilege of running under him and learning from him. Um, he also showed me every single day, that I knew him, that whatever we had, whether it was time or knowledge or money or food on the table, that it increased in value when we could share it with other people. And I thought that what better way to share with as many people as possible than to share the truths that the sport has taught me, and how vulnerable we can be, but we could really find a stronger side to ourselves in that vulnerability, and surprise ourselves, in big, beautiful ways by thinking our way to victory. And so I really feel, I was really wanting to push his legacy and teach more people what he was able to teach me.
And we very sadly lost Vigil. Was it last year?
Yeah.
It must have been tough, right?
It was so hard last summer. He passed away at 94 years old, and his memorial is going to be this September. And I'm giving the eulogy, which will then I'm sure be the hardest thing I've ever done once I do that. The book writing was the hardest thing I've done to this day, but his eulogy will certainly be the hardest thing
Bit
in
tough,
my.
yeah. Well, the book came across really nicely. I think I said in my email to you that I really appreciate the fact that you read it. So, if somebody wants to get their hands on the book, I actually strongly recommend going Audible.
My voice wasn't annoying.
No, no, it was. I actually found it very vulnerable, intimate, and I remember thinking to myself that it made so much difference the fact that you actually read it.
Hmm.
it, and the fact that you told your own story through the book, right?
Yeah.
I'm not one for memoirs and I'm not one for reading this kind of books, but somehow I just thought, I'm going to do this. I'm going to listen to this, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And I can remember exactly when I was listening to it. I was doing this heat training block on a treadmill, so
What were you training for?
I just wanted to check it out because maybe it was a year and a half ago where heat training started to become a bit more popular with the core device. And so I would put on like 3 layers of jackets and 3 layers of winter pants. And I was running for an hour on this treadmill. I did it for a week. And through that process, I had your voice in my ear. Heat training, it's a horrible feeling, but
Yeah.
it was an enjoyable mental space to listen to your story. So I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you for saying that because reading aloud had always been a phobia of mine. I never liked doing it,
Okay.
even in grade school. I did not like reading aloud. And so when my publisher, Penguin Random House, said they wanted me to read the Audible version, I was like, "Oh no, you got to find somebody else to do it." And they really pushed me. And so they rented me a space in Los Angeles with a producer, and I had 5 days to read it. I got it done in three because I'm competitive like that. But I finished reading it, and two things came of that reading. One was that Michelle and I had taken turns reading portions of the book to each other. Every single page got read by one of us, by ourselves, and then together on a phone call, a few phone calls, and we found no errors. It went through multiple editors, no errors. And when I was reading it in front of, or in the studio in front of that microphone, I was talking about Andrea Mead Lawrence, the double gold medalist from the Winter Games. And I said that she was on the mountain and pointed her skies down the vast white slope. And I had to push the pause button, and I asked the producer, "Does your version say skies or is it just mine?" And she says, "No, mine says skies also." And I was like, "Oh, we have an error in the book and it's already been printed." And then the other thing is I went home to Mammoth, 6 hours away, for the producer to call me and tell me that I had to come back in to re-record something. And I was like, "Can I just do a voice memo and send it to you?" And she was like, "No, it needs to be consistent." So I went down, and the only thing I had to say into the microphone was Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the scientist who coined the term
Flow.
flow. He's
Yeah.
got a lot of silent L's in his name. I thought he was Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, but
Yeah,
Mihai
Mihai
Csikszentmihalyi. And I will
Csikszentmihalyi.
forever remember how to say his name after that. 12 hours of driving just to say his name into a
Oh boy. So as we start to land the plane, if someone wants to work with you as their coach, can they, and how would they go about doing that?
So my husband is the coach. He does the
Okay.
coaching. And so he's coachcastor.com and Kastor. And then I do the mental coaching. So He does weekly training programs for runners, whether you want a Boston qualifier or first time 5K runner. And then I do the inspiring with getting
Okay.
them race ready or answering some of their concerns throughout the week. So we have a very limited roster because we want to make sure we're giving good service to all of our clients.
I'll link to that in the show notes. So you have run at the highest level of sport. You've coached athletes mentally, physiologically, at all levels, and you've written a best-selling book. Your relationship with running has evolved for the past 3 to 4 decades. If a runner in their 40s or 50s is listening to this right now, whether they're declining or improving, and they're wondering whether it's worth it to continue to push towards new goals in running, what thoughts would you like to leave them with?
Oh gosh, what a great question. I think I just encourage people to challenge themselves in their running shoes and to find joy. I think if we're enjoying something, we'll most likely stick with it a lot longer, but running really gives you anything that you need. And so if you can get out the door and you've got a lengthy to-do list, by the time you come in the door again, that to-do list is prioritized. If you go out the door and you're stressed out about something or troubleshooting a problem, you come in that door and the problem is either solved or it's scaled down a little bit. It's not as it's not a
Yeah.
firestorm. So I just feel, or you just want to explore. Running has always shown up to give me what I need in the moment. It's not always chasing personal bests, and it's not always just slogging through miles to check it off my list that day. It is deeply rewarding. And I would just say maybe you want it to be enjoyable, but ask of running what you want from it before you get out the door and see if it delivers.
My final question for you, Deena, is what does endurance mean to you?
Mm. Wow. I would say endurance means longevity. I feel like they go hand in hand. So
Yeah.
when you endure, you're seeing yourself through the long haul.
Thank you, Deena.
Thank you so much for having me on.